All right, y'all. It's ponytails time. If y'all don't know who ponytails is, y'all don't know what ponytails is. If you're just joining for the first time, ponytails with tails spelled Tales is a segment where I ask my guests to tell a tale with a ponytail in their head. I give the name of the topic, and then we both share our ponytail. If you've got a ponytail suggestion or a tale you'd like to share, either for the public or just with me, it's fine. You can trust me. Feel free to email the softwaremillennial@gmail.com. So the ponytail topic that I have today for you, Liv and Haley, is the moment you realized you had a biological clock. Mm-hmm. Well, don't all answer at the same time, you know.
I'm like, when was that?
No. I mean, I think like there was a difference between the moment I kind of knew the expectations and then the moment like I felt it in my body.
Yeah.
And so that's what I took a second to like think about that, because like where I grew up, it was like, you are having kids, try to have them young, like you're getting married to hopefully your high school sweetheart if you're lucky, right? And like my whole thing was, I'm gonna go to college and marry my high school sweetheart, then immediately start having kids, right? And so like I knew that from a young age, and I was obsessed with weddings from a really young age, but I didn't really start feeling it until my cousin, who's around the same age, started having kids. And but at that point I had kind of like reconciled, like, now I don't know if I want kids. Now I'm like more open to this idea. But that's when I felt like a pang, like like it was a moment, you know, because you're like holding them, they're so freaking cute, and you're like, oh, interesting. But I still feel like I'm like figuring it out.
Yeah. Wait. Okay. So that feeling, can you describe that feeling, that ping?
Oh, I think it's just like, there was a weird like segment of time where I was like, you know, I really just want to, especially when I was new to dating women, when I was like figuring out my sexuality and queerness and those pieces, where I was like, I definitely want to still have kids, because I like want to know what it feels like to hold and like to grow a little human, you know, and all the things that come with that. And I still think like that's such an incredible thing that bodies can do.
Yes.
So I think that's the pang of like, what is that? Like when they're like rubbing my tummy and it's cute and stuff, you know?
Thank you for describing that, Liv. And what about you, Haley?
Very similar. Grew up in a place where it was, you get married young and have kids pretty early. I mean, that's all of the South.
Yeah.
And so I very much was like, cool, I'll be married. Well, also my parents were married for like a decade before they had kids, which I really loved the idea of, because they got to have this wonderful, I don't think it was intentional. My mom actually had difficulty with having children, but I did like the idea of having this time to really be in this wonderful marriage, or to like really celebrate time with your partner and then have kids. But to do that in that extreme, you have to get, you don't have to, but they got married at like 21 and then had kids at 31. So I was like, cool, timeline.
Right.
I got closer to those ages. I was like, well, I'm not really in a place to do any of that. Seems problematic. And it wasn't until I got out of a big relationship probably 3 years ago that I had thought was kind of the end. And when I got out of that relationship, I was like, oh, well, now like I feel that biological clock, because I didn't care that I was 26, 27 without having been married yet, because I was on that path. And then once I was 27, 28, 29, and I'm like not dating anyone, I'm like, oh no, that seems much closer to, you know, the having kids in early 30s.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh, well, okay. So it's definitely more of, I think there was a long time where I put away the idea of having kids really young. But I think I would say in the last like 2 to 3 years is when I'm kind of like, okay, now I feel like a biological clock. And I don't even know that I want children. I go back and forth on that a lot. But I also feel like if I want them, I'm running out of time.
So what makes you not want kids?
I mean, right now, I think the big issue is I'm not in a position to have children. Like, I don't have a partner. I live with a roommate. I'm not that you can't have children with any of those things.
Right.
But I personally,
you want to be like in a secure relationship where you're like, you know, the child will have two parents that love them just as much dearly. And
also it's like, I'm still figuring out like my job life and what that kind of career looks like and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like where I thought I would be, the like version of settled I thought I would be when I really was ready for children is not where I am. And so then I kind of come back to like, can I have a child in the life that I have currently? Yeah, I can. I just don't know that that's what I want. I struggle to feed myself on a daily basis. I don't know that like also having to feed a child is the best idea. And then I also just got to a point where, you know, I really want to travel. And I started, as I grew up, my idea of what I wanted my adult life to be has kind of shifted. And more the question of, do kids fit into that? Has been rough.
Heard. No, I've definitely I've heard from even friends of mine that have kids that were afraid that they weren't going to be able to do what they could be doing with children. And I do find the ones that have it a little easier are the ones that do have stability overall, like everywhere else. Like they have a family, they have a house, they have like just all these other additives, other people to watch the children when they can't be there. Like they just have more resources, I should say. And that's not the case for all parents, but I think overall in general, people who are parents at our age are happy with having their kids. I don't know if I've met anyone that has regretted it, but I may know people and they just, you know, that's something that you don't want to just like broadcast or even talk to anybody about. So it's kind of like, okay, if there's any millennial friends of mine that are, I would hate to but this is my podcast and I like to talk about uncomfortable discussions. So yes, if you're a millennial and you have a child and you regret having the child, let me know. Oh, I'm a terrible person, but I want to know.
Funny story. I literally had a conversation with someone yesterday. Regret's not the right word, but I had a conversation with someone yesterday who is, I'm going to say early to mid 30s. And I said something about having kids. They have 3 children.
Are they like, 3 children and they're
they have children who are like 6 to 2, I want to say.
Okay.
And I said something about kids and they kind of like took a minute and they're like, I love my kids. My kids are great, obviously. They're like, but I definitely have moments where I'm like, you know what? Being an uncle probably would have been easier. And I'm like, absolutely would have been easier. So it's not that he was like, oh, I regret my kids or you know, I don't think any of that's the case. I'm certainly not going to speak for him, but it's one of the few times I've heard someone kind of honestly be like, not just like, oh, having kids is hard, but really kind of having the sentence of like, maybe it would have been better to choose this path instead of this one.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I do find that at least in some cases, it's like if those parents were to complain about having kids in some way, shape or form, that our society is not as forgiving and being like, well, you could have just decided not to have a child or you could have just done X, Y, and Z. But I don't know. I just feel like that's just really harsh, but that's just, I feel like our world in general is they're not always like that, but I feel like there is not much room for compassion for parents, millennial parents at that. I should be more specific. So thank y'all for your responses. We're going to go into our main topic, which is what we've already been talking about, the biological clock. But I really want to kind of get into the meat of where you feel this pressure to race your biological clock. Where is it coming from? Do you think it may be partially coming from social media, your family, friends? I know for me, it just seems as though every time I open my page, like my Instagram or my Facebook, the first thing I see is either a child or a baby, or I see like a career-esque type post saying like, you know, like from millennials, I should say as well. Like it's kind of one or the other. It's no in between. So it's like child or career, child or career, child, career, child, career. I was like, but I get it. I get it. We're in this point in our lives where like the people that do have kids, they're, you know, they're happy and I'm happy for them. But then we have the people that are, you know, on their career paths as well. And they're also happy because they're announcing that they're, you know, that they're doing something. And I don't know. I also personally just don't feel social media is the best place to showcase anything that's not going well in your life anyway. Because, well, I hold on. Let me backtrack that. What I'm trying to say here is that we don't see that much. People aren't nearly as open about the bad things that are going on in their life or things that they may be regretting and everything, which is why I miss MySpace. Because I feel like in the MySpace times, like people were just a lot more open about like everything. There was no algorithm. So like you saw it when they posted it, like at that time. It wasn't like 3 days later, you know, like, so I don't know. It's just more comfortable and more personal for me. But anyway, who do you think the pressure is coming from on your end?
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, probably social media, kind of what you said, because I think my parents pretty early on were like, Olivia's going to do what she's going to do. Like I moved on a drop of a hat to New Orleans from California, not knowing anybody. And that was when I was 27, right? So I was already past that age. And I had also around that time gotten out of 2 big relationships. I was a serial monogamous at that point. But so my mom, I remember, kind of morbid, she was at our grandma's funeral, and I remember her going, at that time I had a cat, my brother had a dog, and she was like, yeah, I just hope to be like the same type of loving grandma or like pet grandma, like during one she's and I was like, oh. Yeah. And they've been so kind and so sweet, and like, so I don't think it's from that necessarily. It's honestly my cousin's husband, who like we're all really good friends who are the same age. He's like, you don't see this? It's great. It's not that bad. It's really easy. Like you would love it. And I was like, no.
Well, there does seem to be a fear, I guess, in that regard. Like maybe it works for him because maybe that's just who, you know, it's just probably just who he is. It's something that he can adapt to easily. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they are great parents. And that's the thing is like, I would be a great mom. I would be like,
yes, you would.
Yeah, that's not what I'm like worried about at this point. And exactly to your point, I think just because the way things are set up, like on a teacher's salary by myself, that's like not something I'm considering at this point. And then also like kind of what you were saying earlier, Haley, like I'm living a life that I didn't necessarily expect in a great way, right? Like you're building this whole adult life, but it's like, I like to travel. I play rugby still. I'm in a band. And so it's just like all of doing some consulting where I might travel. So it's like, that doesn't fit and maybe it will never fit. And like, I'm open to all the possibilities. I do though. It is like seeing people's cute family pictures who were like, I went to high school with on Instagram. Just sometimes I'm like, I want that. Sometimes.
You say something very interesting about, is it the stability of having a child in one spot where they can grow up, or it's just like maybe just having a child that is going to have to travel with you everywhere and like, you know, just basically be a part of your everyday routine?
I think it's what you were saying earlier about like having that stability and people around. Like I was really lucky that my parents chose to stay where they were instead of moving for a job, because both my grandparents were where I grew up. And so I got to grow up with my grandparents around, all of my family around who were there for like childcare and those types of things. And I don't have that here. And so I think maybe if I were in California at this point, I would be considering it some more. But right now it just doesn't feel like a possibility.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what about you, Haley?
Mine's actually really similar. I think I get the most pressure, honestly, from like extended family. Like I don't get it from my parents. I get it from my cousin, and I get it from my sister. My cousin is so I'm the youngest of 6 cousins, and my eldest cousin's the only one who has kids right now. Okay. And when he only had one, he was really pushy about like, well, you need to have kids so that they have like their child has someone to play with. And I'm like, that seems like a you issue. That seems like a you thing, man. That's not for me at the time. And then my sister, which we talked a little bit on the podcast before, is in a wheelchair. And so she had to kind of come to grips with the terms that like, she's not really going to be able to have kids. And so, and really all she wants is to be a mom, like in the like hierarchy of things that she wants in her life, it's to be a mom. So that's definitely difficult for her. And so she started to come to terms with that via deciding she'd be the best aunt, so that when I started being like, I don't know that I want to have kids, we had to have a real, like, that caused a lot of problems. And it's fine. We've gotten to a place where it's okay. But I was like, I love you and I sympathize. And I can't imagine what that must be like, but it's not my responsibility to have kids because you weren't able to have kids. Because ultimately, like, how is that good for anyone? It's not good for me. It's not good for you. It's not good for the child. Like, if I choose to have kids, of course she will be the best aunt and she will be so amazing and incredible. But I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I know we've been talking about the biological clock of everything. And yes, your sister may not be able to have like biological kids, but has she maybe considered potentially, possibly maybe having like adopted?
So my sister has 24-hour care.
So, okay.
I was like, I can't definitively say that no adoption agency would let that happen, but I feel exceptionally confident in it.
Yeah. At least in this day and age, but that could change.
Yeah. And maybe I was like, but her and her partner, and her husband both have round the clock care. So,
gotcha.
You know, they can't cook for themselves. They can't transfer themselves. None of that. So like they wouldn't be, she's not really able to hold a child unless someone's like really close and like also helpful. So it's one of those things that unfortunately it's just really not feasible. Having said that, if we're just going off of like capacity to love and care for someone, you won't find someone better than my sister. You just won't. So I don't know what that looks like in the future in like a world. I mean, I can talk about disabled rights for days. So I don't know what that looks like in a future world where that was more of an option for 2 people who are that level of disabled to really find a way to care for children. But she does a lot of volunteer work with kids. A lot of like library reading programs and stuff. And she's obviously that's not the same, but she has found a little bit of
a fulfillment in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I could get that. I feel the same way. I know when I just think back to when I was a child, and yes, my parents provided for me as best as they could, but I remember so many influential adults in my life from that time that I was like, you know, if that's who I get to be for some other child someday, like I want that, you know, like, it's just as important, you know?
Well, and Liv, I heard you said that you're a teacher. So I do education as well. And I think when my biological clock gets really bad, not to say that I don't want kids or that I turned it off, but when it gets really bad and I kind of sit down and look at it right now, I remind myself that like, I am still an influential adult in several children's lives. And that seems to kind of put a little bit of it at ease, because when you really think about like, why do you want kids? Do you want kids so you physically have one because you want to be pregnant, or just because you want to love and care and help nourish a child? And usually the answer is C. And so as an educator, you get to do that a lot. And you don't have to be an educator. You can just be a really awesome aunt or neighbor or godparent or whatever else. But
yep. as long as you are on this earth as an adult, there's a child out there that is looking up to you, whether they are your godchild, your nephew, your niece, your whatever, like they're your student, like they looking at you. They are watching what you do. I think that's why when I was so young, I was like, I know these adults are adults, but like they're just big children. Like I knew that from a young age. And I'm like, why can't I come to the adults table? Y'all are talking about something I already know about. I didn't say anything, but it's just like, yeah, it's interesting. I think in a way, like I think I've talked about this on past episodes, how adults do sometimes treat children like they don't deserve to be. They just don't treat them like humans, like actual humans. And it's like, stay in a child's place sort of situations. And I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like, and this is not all adults, this is not all parents. This is absolutely, it depends on the person, but there definitely are adults out there that only will see children as children, even when those children are full-on adults. Mm-hmm. It's hard for them to, take that. And I mean, we all kind of go through that in a way, but I think that in the ways that we raise children, some raise children in order to, without the intention of understanding that they are going to be adults someday and they need to be prepared in that way. And so the sooner you treat them that way, I'm not even saying being like harsh on the children or whatever, because you shouldn't even be harsh on adults. Like we should be harsh towards each other. It's more along the lines of just like, like if there's anything that child wants to talk about, anything that child wants to do, like definitely like really like put things aside and like talk to them like person to person and not like adult to child. Because I feel like they're going to appreciate that.
There's a level of being so concerned of like letting kids stay kids is like a big thing of like keeping that innocence that you don't also remember like it's your job to prepare them for life. So it's like, yes, of course you want to protect innocence and make sure that they're still being a kid and having fun. But like at the end of the day, especially like as a parent or even like as some kind of leader in that child's life, it's your job to make sure that they're prepared. And so if and when they want to talk about certain situations and stuff, the idea of being like, oh, that's too young for you, I feel like is more detrimental than just being like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out.
Right. So I had like 5 different resources I was going through and it'll be in the show notes, by the way, everybody. But I mean, they have like basically the top 3 reasons why millennials aren't having kids right now. The first thing obviously is cost. All of us are in debt. We don't want to put ourselves more in debt by having children. That's completely understandable. Number 2, they don't want to birth a child knowing that they're going to have it worse than we already do. And then the third is just the time consumption and afraid of like losing freedom. Like you're now, this human is now going to be dependent on you for everything up at least until they're 18, unless that changes in the next couple of years where like the government is like 18 is too young, it needs to be 21 or something, like it might even go up to 21, who knows. So do y'all find that might be the same reason why y'all are deciding to have children right now, or do you think there's might be something else in there? I know we kind of talked about this already, but just to reiterate.
No, I think another reason for me too, because like I grew up with the idea that that's like what you're supposed to do, but now that there's just so many people speaking out around like maybe that's not a life thing that I want. Like there are other life achievements that like that shouldn't be the only thing you base a successful adult life on. And so for me, that's what I'm really reevaluating of like maybe children isn't a life thing that's going to be in my life, and I'm fine with that. Right? Like what Instagram do I follow? It's like Supreme Rich Auntie. And it's so good. And she like talks about what it means to be like a single woman without children and like the things she's able to do because of it. And not because like to spite people who have children and to say like, oh, your choice was wrong, but like, this is my choice. And these are the things that I'm doing because
celebrating her choice
and
not feeling bad about it.
Like, yeah, exactly right. Like, it's not because, oh, no one wanted to have a baby with me. It's not because of the money thing. It's not because that's like, it wasn't in my cards.
Yeah.
Well, you said something earlier that I thought was really, I don't know, that made me think. It's like when you open social media right now, it's like I see people with children or like job stuff, which is true. But I don't know if it's because it's what I want the most, but I'm seeing this like subsection of people who are like, which I guess would fall under jobs, but they're like traveling. Every time I see them, they're somewhere else.
Yes.
And I'm like, how are you and it doesn't seem like they have a job. So I'm like, what? And I think it's because more and more people are working remotely or creating their own jobs or, you know, doing something. I don't even know. I have reached out to people being like, what do you do? And how do I get it? Because they're just constantly going and they always, at least seem, social media is very fickle this way, but seem like they're on vacation, that they're going for fun. And I'm like, how do you have the money to do that? How do you have the time to do that? And how can I do it? And so this idea that you can have a successful life that is not settling down and having kids and family and whatever, that your success can be how many countries you've traveled to and the experiences you've had. Like, I want to be right now, I want to be that person who like, man, my aunt's crazy. She just constantly tells about the time that she was like with an Egyptian prince or like was touring over here or like, you know, like saw, I don't know, I'm just picking out random things. I don't know. Like, you know, snorkeled off Australia or did that. Like, I want to be that person that I'm like, yeah, I have this whole rich lifetime of stories.
Yeah. Being a cool, adventurous aunt. Like, man, you'll be the auntie that everybody wants to like come to for travel advice. Like, yeah, like I would love
and get to meet people with different cultures and different lives and like, and whatever that means, whether that, you know, in relationships, in, you know, where I live and how I work, just, I don't know, more and more the idea of like a 9-to-5 that I get when I'm young and keep till I'm old so that I can buy a house and meet a man and have children and send them to school to start it all over again. Just the more and the older I get, the more I'm like, that sounds.
It sounds, yeah. Same here.
And that's not wrong. That's not.
It's not.
Way to live. Not in any respect. I still have days that I very much am like, oh, I do want that. But more often than not, it's swinging towards how do I go meet a bunch of really hot people in other countries and have fun with them.
I love it. So I know. Okay, so I guess. Overall, we're at least kind of in the same ballpark in a way where we're not completely sure if we want kids, but if we do, it's going to be one of those things where we don't want to sacrifice our freedom, liberties in a way to like be able to care for this children, and maybe also not have the traditional lifestyle or choice of, you know, the accepted choice of like just having a child and getting married and living in a home 9-to-5, just as Haley was saying. But let's say you've changed your mind. Let's say you got only another year left before you know your eggs are going to be completely scrambled or something like that. What requirements do you personally have that you like personally have set for yourself before you're like, okay, it's time for me to have a child? Like, do you have any standards or something that you want to make sure that you have in the bag before you have children? I asked the hard questions.
I know. I think having like a really tight-knit community, whether it be biological family or like the community that I've built here in New Orleans, like I think it's really cool at the school that I'm working at now. Everyone's super tight and like all of them are having kids at the time, right? And so like all of the kids have like this huge community. So something like that. I want to say job, but it's just like people make things work, right? Like if you really want to, you make it work. Like a kid, if they feel loved, if they are fed, you're fine. But obviously like healthcare needs and those different pieces. I would like to have a more stable job that I wouldn't have to worry about healthcare for my child or feeding my child, or shelter, those types of things. I would like to have a supporting partner because it's hard enough for me to take care of my dog and my cat and not ask my boyfriend for a million favors right now, but so it'd be nice. But I see lots of single parents who are killing the game. So
right.
That would be a perk.
Gotcha.
Can we also just make a small comment of how upsetting it is that like as a teacher, it's like, I would like a job that I have more secure healthcare and money.
That part.
Just while we're there, while we brought it up.
Yeah, I had a teacher episode like right at the end of last year, and I was so amazed at like what y'all are going through, especially during the pandemic. I was just like, wow.
People who are teaching in schools during the pandemic are truly, because I work for a church right now, so it's my version of educating is very open and subjective, and I have a lot of freedom. And so the people who are teaching in a school during the pandemic are truly like top 3 biggest heroes of the pandemic. I think everyone should worship them. But like Liv was saying, I kept trying to think of like, okay, what are the things that I would really need? And a lot of them watered back down to community. Because I'd be like, well, I want a job because a really good job or whatever. So there was, security. But like Liv said, is people make it work all the time. And usually the people who make it work have a good community, whether that's a family, whether that's a partner, whether that's a stable enough job that they can purchase help, like whatever that is.
Yes.
It still comes back to the concept of like, it takes a village to raise a child. You like that idea of like feeling supported, not only to like help support your child, but help support you, because you can't pull from an empty well. So like, if you're not taking care of yourself and people, which you will always need help with, then you're not going to be able to love and support a child the way that they need to be loved and supported. So I think community, making sure that I had a really solid community around me would be the most important thing.
Heard. Thank you for that. Another question that's kind of just sparked in my memory at the moment is, how like, technology and just like everything is advancing these days, and like we can have kids a lot older than we actually, our biological clock is saying, hey, you can only have kids up until this point. But now that we can freeze our eggs and everything, like we can definitely wait a little longer if we want to. Have y'all maybe considered that for yourselves? Maybe. Possibly. I know that they're kind of expensive though. From what I hear.
Well, that's the other thing, and like exactly right. Like that's really expensive. I was gonna say, like I had a really great example in my aunt. She didn't have my cousin until she was 40, and so that was always like I used to really want kids when I was really young, and also I see this other side of it. And she and her husband at the time were both lawyers, right, and were able to pay for the medical pieces that go into that. Because I'm sure, and for a lot of people, it's really hard as you get older. But I would consider, absolutely. I have lots of friends who have waited until they're 35, 36 to have kids, and have actually really happy about it.
Yeah, my sister was like 40 when she had my nephews. They're twins. And that was her only set of children she's ever. She got twins. So it was wonderful. Oh, man. Were you about to say something, Haley? Okay, yeah.
So I tend to think that, like, I think I have a couple of people in my life, too, who had kids older. And so I definitely don't feel like there's, like, I'm sure there's a rough definitive age, but where it's, like, no more kids for me. But even if I got closer to that age, I think I also felt like I wanted kids. I may look more closely at adoption than I would like freezing my own eggs or like in vitro or something like that. Just because there's so many kids who need love and support already. That if I really, at that point, I feel like if I really felt called to have kids, I would probably look more into that. Maybe not. I don't know. I also have thought a lot about being a surrogate. I have a couple of friends especially a couple of homosexual friends who are in relationships who have talked about having kids. And I think there's something for me to be like, I wouldn't mind like being a surrogate for y'all. And then I don't really have, I mean, the child isn't mine, but I've been through that process. And I feel like that would kind of fulfill a need, but also the people who really want to raise a child full time would have it. And then I could still go off and be my crazy travel aunt self.
I hadn't even thought about that. Like, I didn't even like, yeah, I could totally just be a surrogate and like, just still like, wow, yeah. I did not think about that.
Especially if it's for people you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think surrogacy is beautiful, and I think you really have to be a good person for it, or not, you have to be the right person for it. Because I do think, especially with someone you know, would you feel territorial over that child? I wouldn't. Yeah. I would be very much in the mindset of this is their child, and I am just assisting them. But I also think I would feel bonded to that child in like a godparent, aunt, uncle kind of way. Like, yeah. I will fight to the death for you, but you're not mine. You're theirs.
Right.
So,
and I think overall, just the whole idea of what a parent is, it's not just biological.
Mm-hmm.
And like remembering that, I mean, yes, for most people it may seem that way, but I mean, not all of us were even blessed to have one parent, sometimes two parents. Some had no parents, you know, like, so it's like you have to find someone that's closest to that, you know? Mm-hmm. So, wow, that really made me think. Thank you so much for that, Haley. Well, I think that's all I really have to say or talk to y'all about as of right now. If I have anything else, you know, I'll definitely, you know, shoot another email, but I really appreciated this conversation that I had with you, Liv and Haley. And I hope that all of my millennials are listening to this episode kind of got some inspiration. Maybe we'll have some more surrogates in the mix now that we've kind of talked about it, you know, because not all of us obviously are called for parenthood, but we may just want to still go through the biological clock to help someone else out that may never be able to have a child, you know? So that's something, oh God, that's just something that's something I might consider.
Once you get it in your head, you're like, interesting. I don't know. It's something that I've felt not like called to do, but like I've thought about it for a long time now. So I feel pretty confident in my assessment that if someone that I loved really wanted me to do that, I'd be confident in it. But I also realize that's not for everyone.
You know what? I just thought about something, however. What if you actually already have a partner, but you were surrogate for somebody else? Like, do you think that would be something that you would be, or even like your partner would be okay with? Especially if y'all haven't had kids with each other.
I think that's something that each kind of relationship would have to discuss. I would like to think that I would be with a partner who understands, like, if I have friends who physically are incapable of having children and have asked me to help them in such an intense, you know, beautiful way, they trust me enough for that. I like to think that I have a partner who would understand why I felt led to help them and would support me in that way. But I also think that I would be aware enough to be like, you know, this isn't our child. It's not your pregnancy. Yes, you're going to have to deal with it because you're my partner, but you're not having to take classes or prep to be a parent or something because it's not your child.
Yeah.
So I think it would just be different.
Anyway. What about you, Liv?
Again, yes, I probably would if it's also, are you talking about the partner question or are you talking about the being a surrogate?
Kind of both. Like if you were like, let's say your current partner and you're like a surrogate for somebody else, like would your partner, you think possibly, how would you handle that? Like, how would you like tell them, yo, I'm going to be a surrogate for someone. I know we don't have kids yet, but I just, you know, and I'm not sure if I want to have kids with you, but I want to be a surrogate for somebody else, you know, like.
Yeah. I think to Haley's kind of like it being very circumstantial and hopefully dating someone who is like, you communicate regularly with and could have that conversation. Honestly, the person that I'm dating now, he'd be like, yeah, all right, sounds about right. Like,
good.
So if, I don't know, if people are listening, I was like, I don't know if I'd do it right now in my life because of like all the things that I'm doing, traveling, all those different pieces. But I would consider it absolutely if friends in the same circumstance like weren't able to and really wanted to have that birthing experience with someone they were comfortable with. I would definitely be sorry. You know, like in college when you're looking up crazy things because you have no money, and I like looked up like donating my eggs or like selling my eggs, not donating, selling my eggs.
Yeah.
They pay you to do that.
I know.
In those really tough times, I mean, I never was really tough, thank God, but in those times where I was like, man, I need some money, I looked it up. So.
I forgot all about that. I forgot all about that. Shoot. I mean, shoot, it'd be interesting to have like a bunch of different versions of me out here in the world that I don't really know about. And then one day they just knock on my door like, hey, I found out you're my mom. I'm like, what?
No. You found out that I donated my eggs, not that I am your mother. Because again, parent versus biological bringer into the world. Different things.
Exactly. All right. Well, before we go, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware. If you want to give your socials, throw them out there. Let them know where they can find you. Maybe you got some people that want you to be their surrogates already, you know? So, shoot. You never know.
How I get the money to go travel.
Yes, come on.
I mean, I have seriously considered OnlyFans pictures of my feet. Listen, not above anything.
Hey. Okay.
Work is work is work.
Yes. Money is money, whether it's coming from, no matter where it's coming from. Everybody, again, if you enjoyed this episode, you can check out all the other 50 episodes that have been up already. But if you've already listened to all of those, I thank you first off. Thank you so much for doing that. But I also have more episodes on my Patreon. So you can subscribe to my Patreon where I post lots of behind the scenes content and reflections pertaining to the podcast, but also to like my music projects and sometimes a lot of times my personal life. That's www.patreon.com/theself-aware-millennial. Thank you so much, Liv. Thank you so much, Haley. Welcome back to the fam, TSAM fam, and welcome to the TSAM fam, Liv. You always have a home here. Thank y'all so much again. I hope that y'all have a great day, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.